Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. Some of y'all one day are going to have to own up to Scott that I am the man. That what I tell you is going to happen, and when I tell you is going to happen, you need to say, thank you, he's right. The Lord has given him insight and discernment.
Don't put that on the Lord.
No.
Don't put that on the Lord.
Hold on, one
no.
second,
He
one
about to
second,
start praying
one
up in here.
second. I know my spiritual gifts. What about you two heathens? All right, y'all. I told y'all in Florida. I told y'all the Republicans were not going to take 65% of the people voting to restore voting rights to formerly incarcerated, especially when it affects upwards of 1.4 million people. I kept telling y'all that. We were excited on election night, and I said, watch them damn Republicans in Florida. You know what they gonna do. And even with my man Desmond Meade and his wife Sheena came on, oh no, we gonna register the people. I'm like, I'm trying to tell you, don't trust Republicans. Now you have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who beat Andrew Gillum by 30,000 votes, because enough of y'all didn't take your ass to the polls.
In Miami-Dade.
No, he beat him.
No, he didn't beat him.
Only 57% of the people in Miami-Dade turned out.
Exactly.
Hello.
That is the point.
Yep.
He has said today he will sign a bill that will require ex-felons to pay all financial obligations before they can vote. Now remember, again, Amendment 4 passed in November. 65%. Republicans and Democrats voted for it. But come January, all of a sudden Republicans are like, well, we're not quite sure. All these registrars don't really know what to do when they actually knew what to do. Just register the people. And I kept saying, don't trust them, don't trust them. So then what happened? The legislature, they come into session, and then the House then goes, oh, guess what? In order to say that you paid everything back, they passed a bill saying you must pay all fines and penalties before you get the right to vote. They passed it, then the Senate passed it. Now, after some modifications, the governor says he is indeed going to sign. In a moment, we're going to be talking with the political director for the Florida Rights Restoration Commission Coalition. I want to break this down with my panel. A. Scott Bolden, the former chair, National Bar Association Political Action Committee. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president emerita, Bennett College. Michael Brown, former vice chair, DNC Finance Committee. I made this point, Michael and Scott, you are both lawyers. I think you're a lawyer, Scott. Michael, you're a lawyer, right?
He's a real lawyer. I'm just a lobbyist.
You're a lobbyist, but you got a law degree, right?
But I could play lawyer.
You got a law degree, right? So good. So I'll go to you first, Michael. You got to wait.
Oh,
you got to
God.
wait.
You messing up my business.
No, you got to wait because you talk too much. So,
Scott?
Michael,
Yes.
here's what. So I believe that the Florida folks, again, they made a mistake. When they went before, so what happened was they had to go through all this stuff to get the language approved. They went before the Supreme Court. And what came up before the Supreme Court was their lawyers essentially said, yeah, it might include having to pay back fines or whatever, okay? But they immediately glossed over that, no big deal. Supreme Court approves the language. Republicans saw that as their opening. And they came back and they said, wait a minute. The lawyers for the coalition, they've already stated in court before the Supreme Court that it may mean paying back all of your fines. Now, do I believe the voters, their intent with Amendment 4 was that, yes, they immediately get their vote rights restored.
Yes.
But they left this opening, and that's what Republicans are riding on. This is going to go to court, but the problem is that their lawyers have already spoken on this before the Supreme Court. They may have accidentally given them their opening where this might be constitutional.
They may have, and I haven't read the statute, the governing statute related to that in the state of Florida. Politically, it's going to be a problem. Legally, I don't know. Hopefully, that the statute has another loophole on the other side. But did the legislation actually call for paying back the fees and the fines? Did the legislation call for it?
No, the legislation did not call for it.
Right. So,
but the problem is, it's again, it goes to intent. It goes to what was argued before the Supreme Court, and all the politicians are hanging their hat on. Wait a minute, your own lawyers agreed that it might cover this, Scott. That may be a problem for them.
Maybe it's called opening the door, but the real issue isn't whether is the new legislation, because the new legislation allows them for their debt to be forgiven, or it allows them to have the finances. If they owe the money, they can get it converted to community service. The Republicans are going to argue that it's not a poll tax, even though it looks like it and sounds like it, because you can do it through community service, or it can be converted or be forgiven by the complaining witness that you allegedly owed the money to. That's the real defense that you've got to address on the Democratic side. I think they will, but if left to be the case, Michael's right, it's a real political problem for the Democrats and all the voters. The second argument is going to be that by allowing this or amending the legislation that has to be specific, that you are disenfranchising the 65% of Florida voters who actually voted for this. Look for those two arguments. I think the Democrats are going to win in the end, because the will of the voters was that these convicted felons who are out now should be allowed to vote. It's the will of the people.
But the problem, though, Julian, is that you could tie this thing up into court.
Yes.
And it could affect the 2020 election.
Hold on one second. Only if they get a stay. Otherwise, it'll run.
I got you, but.
But that is the issue indeed. If 1.4 million new voters, they're likely to lean Democrat, but they're not all Democratic voters. And so we need to have Republicans who are convicted felons to step up and say, look, I want my voting rights back too, because this is not necessarily partisan. But if they run this into 2020, obviously it will affect that election. But it may affect it one of two ways. If Democratic voters are sufficiently outraged by this, perhaps we'll get more than 57% turnout in a Broward County. If people look at it and say,
or
look,
Miami-Dade.
It was Broward that was Miami-Dade that was 57%. Broward was around the same.
Yeah, so, basically, if you could get up to a 65 to 70% turnout, no matter what happens, you basically will lean back Democratic. So
this was the language.
People be angry enough.
Let me read the language. The language said, this amendment restores the voting rights of Floridians with felony convictions after they complete all terms of their sentence, including parole or probation. The amendment would not apply to those convicted of murder or sexual offenses who will continue to be permanently barred from voting unless the governor and cabinet vote to restore their voting rights on a case-by-case basis. The issue here is after they complete all terms of their sentence, including parole or probation.
And fines. Don't say it. It says all terms. And
okay. So if you're convicted, hold on. That's why I read it. I just wanted to make it clear. You ain't got to make it clear because I made it clear.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got a Houston shirt on.
It says, after they complete.
You talk too much.
Yes, he does. After they complete all terms of their sentence, including parole or probation.
Does that say fine?
No, wait a minute. One second. What Republicans are arguing is that
fine is a term.
all terms is that when you get sentenced and the judge says this is what your sentence is, they are arguing that fines or restitution to the victims all falls under all terms. And when they went to the Florida Supreme Court to ratify the language of this language, that issue came up. And that's why I'm saying the argument was made, and their attorneys have said, yeah, it came up, but we didn't see it as a big deal at the time. But this is what Republicans are latching on. That language, and again, all terms, that's what the fight is going to be about, and that's why they passed this new law.
And are they going to lump in child support, parking tickets, which have nothing to do with the sentence?
Right.
Are they going to lap that in too? That will be their next level.
Not if it's part of their felony conviction.
I would think not.
I would think not, but you're right. They will. How it's implemented at the local level and the court level is going to be really important too. So that's pretty strong language, because most courts, Supreme Court and otherwise, will look at the plain language of the statute first and then start their analysis from there.
The issue is the will of the people. 65% of Florida voters said they wanted former convicted felons and returning citizens to have their right to vote. The citizens are being completely, basically zeroed out by the legislature. So but of course, both the Senate and the House, the lower house in Florida, are Republican controlled, and they're running roughshod over people's rights. And this so reminds me, Roland, of the post-Reconstruction era and the ways that basically black folks' voting rights were eviscerated. Here we go again with the court manipulations, legislative manipulations, other ways. Now, all these folks are not black, but it's a way of ensuring that the powerful maintain
But the
power.
legislative intent is on the plain language of the statute,
But-
all terms. And so
But
I think you're going to have an uphill battle. I understand the will of the people because I first argued that. But as you look at the plain language, the legislative intent of Democrats and Republicans who represent the voters was that all terms shall be met. Then you
This
can vote.
is a poll tax, you know.
may be.
It
Yeah,
is
go
a
ahead.
poll
But it's a
tax.
legal
And
one.
No, well, poll taxes by law.
It's a legal one.
Poll taxes are illegal, Scott. I mean, I know you think you're a brilliant legal mind, and sometimes I rely
why
on that.
is my
But right this
professionalism
minute,
under
my
attack
brother,
on this
right
show?
this because you put it out there. Because you put it out there. If you didn't put it out there, nobody would
It's
be
the
bothering
plain
you.
language of the statute.
No. Again, no, that's not true. You keep saying it's the plain language, but it's not plain.
You just read it.
No. Let me reiterate again. I need you to hear. I need you to listen.
He can't listen. He's
You can't listen because he's talking. What happened here was
Houston shirt
the,
is
the folks who are behind this amendment, they thought it was plain. What I kept saying is, don't trust Republicans. What we have seen by Republican legislatures in Utah when it came to Medicaid expansion, we've seen by Republican legislatures in Maine, in Wyoming, in Michigan, in North Dakota, all across the country, they literally are blowing off the initiatives voted on by the people. They were in search of all of these loopholes. And that's what they found. And so that's where we sort of now stand. And so the problem now comes to what is all terms? Does it boil down to you're out, and even if like one woman, and it was a white woman who owed like $57,000, and she said, well, this is grossly unfair that I can't vote until I pay back the $57,000. Republicans are saying, oh, no, you got to pay everything back. But the voters were thinking, no, once you are out, and if you haven't committed murder, you haven't raped anybody. In fact, again, how Republicans operate. I'm going to read a story here. This is from the Washington Post. An earlier version of the bill, again, this is how, and I keep telling people, y'all need to understand Republicans don't believe in playing fair.
No,
They
they don't.
believe in power and
believe in
winning.
winning, yep.
Okay. And here we go to my iPad. One early GOP proposal prompted an uproar by broadly defining sexual offenses to include, in addition to violent crimes, video voyeurism, lewd exhibition, prostitution, and locating an adult entertainment store within 2,500 feet of a school. That wasn't included, but I need people to understand this is what they do. They saw the opening and were like, okay, let's try to limit as many people as possible because they don't want that 1.4 million to register because that immediately changes Florida electoral politics. And Mike, they understand Donald Trump won Florida last time. This, if they allow it to register, could flip that entire state. And the supermajority they have in the legislature could be in danger if those folks are voting in local districts.
I happened to be on the show that night. I forget the gentleman who was one of the organizers.
Desmond Meade,
Yes.
who organized it all.
And we told them that they had too many black faces as the front for this effort. And it's not just black people in Florida that are felons. You needed to diversify who the message was because you got a lot of white families out there that want their children to be able to vote. Well, not just
And they had white folks.
members
They
to
had
vote.
white folks who out there
They
as
did.
well.
They did.
At least half of the felons are not black. At least half of them are not black. You know, when you look at incarceration, et cetera, when you look at parole, probation, et cetera, and I would say that 60% of them are white people.
But here is again though, how media matters. So for instance, you look at the First Step Act, okay? Trump has portrayed that as that's going to help the black community. And the people who support the First Step Act have been going along with it. I've been going, hey, it's some white folks who qualify under the First Step Act.
Come on.
So the problem is when you to Michael's point, and he's correct, when we have these discussions about criminal justice reform, I understand why we, as African Americans, look at this totally different because we understand it disproportionately affects us. But the problem is when you have initiatives like this here, how white folks view it, all of a sudden it becomes, oh, that's that black law. And you're absolutely right. That's why it was important when I had a video of a white woman who said, hey, I owe $57,000. This affects me. That's going to be one of those keys going forward in terms of who is out there communicating on this. And so it's going to be, I just need our people to understand. They are not going to play fair. They're not.
Right.
They're not going to play fair. Republicans are hell-bent. Y'all need the never-Trumpers. It's a small number. You look at folks like Eric Erickson from Georgia, who did not support Donald Trump in the last election, who's already said he will vote for him again. Why? Because he's supporting the policies that they also want. You look at what they just confirmed another judge lifetime appointment. They have no intentions on playing fair. We better be fully prepared for an absolute assault on voting and voter suppression by Republicans nationwide.
We need to look back again at the post-Reconstruction era and look at the ways, the chicanery, the ways of white supremacy were elevated. Just yesterday, Roland, that man who lives in a house that enslaved people built proposed a new set of regs around what poverty meant. And so they want to narrow the definition of poverty. A poverty line for a family of four is $25,900,
right,
something like that. But they want to basically narrow that so that fewer people will qualify for public assistance. Mm-hmm. He has made several comments about the fact that so-called able-bodied people are receiving assistance. So if he gets reelected, this man is going to have a romp.
Oh, yeah.
A romp.
Oh, no.
through
Steve
our rights.
Bannon has already said, you have not seen an unhinged Donald Trump. He said if he gets a second term, he is going hard. And but I just need our folks to understand that we can't get caught up in this game of not understanding voter suppression. That they are going to try everything, Scott.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, but going back to the Florida voting piece, the roots of why you can't vote in this country if you've got a convicted felon date back to the Jim Crow days. And several states still have it, but there is no causal connection whatsoever between your voting and whether you've served a prison term.
They don't care.
One factual connection.
But
it was originally put forth in the southern states to block people of color and new slaves.
No. It was not put in place to block people of color.
What was it put in place for?
To block black people.
Yes. Thank you, Roland.
I'm sorry.
No. There are
Oh,
times that we use people of color too broadly.
But does it stop black
was
people, and I said
specifically to
slaves.
stop black people.
Oh, my
No,
goodness.
no, Scott-
All right, Professor.
Scott,
forgive
it's
me.
an important-
I take your
You-
friendly
you're
amendment.
forgiven.
Hold on. I'll
But
take your
Scott, it's
friendly
an
amendment.
important point.
It is an important point.
And my point is sustained.
Somebody send him to law school.
Sustained.
Out of here.
Julian.
Well, here's the point. We keep saying people of color to dilute the attacks on black people. Black. Say it again. But when you say people, they want
no problem with that. I
Yes,
said
there is a problem.
slaves, to block slaves from voting.
Enslaved people, thank you.
Forgive me for using the
Okay,
term
go ahead.
people of
Finish your
color.
point, please.
My point is this, right?
He don't have no
There's
point.
no causal connection, no political or legal connection between whether you should be able to vote because you've been a convicted
No,
felon.
there is a political connection.
No,
You're black.
Yeah, exactly, which is not sustainable under the Constitution.
It's
Yes,
been
it is.
sustainable.
So every state ought to take a look at this. Florida took a look
Scott,
at.
how do we get Plessy? How do we get Plessy?
Exactly.
That was upheld.
I am arguing in your favor. I am saying.
No, you're not arguing in my favor.
I am. What I'm saying is that no state should have a law that blocks felons from voting.
But here's the deal. That's nice in a very hypothetical world. But the reality is, after this
This is
passed,
the Roberts Court.
But here's the deal. After this passed, the Republican governor of Iowa, she came out and she said, shut down. The reality is, Republican voters, white Republican voters, support these measures. This was a 10-year effort in Florida. It took a decade to get this on the ballot. They do not want this in Texas or Tennessee or Georgia or
North
Arkansas
Carolina. Come
Then
on.
how do
or
you
North
explain
Carolina.
Florida then?
No.
It took 10 years, but Florida voted for this.
No. Follow me here. You keep saying that no state should have this. What I'm saying is this, Michael, is in the interest of Republicans to keep fewer folks voting, and they do not want to see, especially black folks, but even others voting. They don't want to do it.
You know, there's another part of suppression outside of the pieces we're talking about. is internal suppression, especially when we have all these folks running in the primary. If your person doesn't win, you're upset, you take your ball to go home, and you don't come out for the general. During the Republican, they had 17 people, but all those people backed Trump because he was the nominee. Yeah, you had a couple of people, outliers that didn't do it.
Right.
But I guarantee you they didn't vote for Hillary.
Right.
They may have written somebody in, but they got it to the poll. So we have to be careful about that.
Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.